My son forgot to hang up the phone and I heard him call me useless old woman, so I decided to do something he never imagined. The phone's buzz cut through the heavy silence of the house like a knife. It wasn't a cheerful sound, not even expected. It was just that a mechanical buzz demanding attention. I left the sponge I was using to clean the kitchen counter, a gesture repeated 1,000 times, and dried my hands on my apron, that old friend of worn fabric and stubborn stains that told stories of meals and days. "Yes," I said, my voice a little hoarse from the morning's disuse. "Hi, Mom." It was Daniel's voice. My son, my only son. That voice that, for years, had been the soundtrack of my life, from his baby gurgles to the brittle tones of adolescence, now firm and adult, but always, or so I believed, with a background of warmth that only a mother could perceive. "Daniel, sweetheart. How are you? How are things?" My heart, that old tired engine, always gave a little flutter when he called. It was the point of light in the gray routine of my widowed days. "Fine, fine. Listen, Mom. I'm calling quickly." His tone was practical, rushed, as if he were going through a to-do list and I was one of the items. "Have you gone to the bank yet about the transfer?" I looked toward the calendar hanging next to the refrigerator, full of notes in my shaky handwriting. "Not today, my dear. I was going to go tomorrow. It's just that today they had a promotion at the corner supermarket. Buying 2 packages of dishwasher detergent, they gave you the third." He let out a sigh. It wasn't a sigh of tiredness, but of exasperation. I knew him so well, that little sound of air escaping between his teeth that he'd used since childhood when something didn't seem right to him. "Mom, please. I told you today. I need it first thing tomorrow morning. It's important." "But son, if tomorrow morning—" "Mom," he cut me off, with a firmness that chilled my fingers, despite them still being warm from the dishwater. "It's not negotiable. Could you please drop whatever you're doing and go now? Please." There was an urgency in his voice that alarmed me. "Of course, Daniel. Of course. Don't worry. I'll go right now." "Is something wrong? Are you okay? Do you need more money? And the children? And Laura?" My mouth, always so quick to spill worry, let loose like a torrent. "Everything's fine, Mom. Everyone's fine. I just need you to do that, okay?" His voice softened a little, as if he realized he'd been too harsh. It was a technique he used often, a pinch followed by a verbal caress. "Thanks, you're a treasure. I don't know what I'd do without you." Those words, "I don't know what I'd do without you," should have filled me with warmth. For years they had. They were payment for all the sleepless nights, for the worries, for the sacrifices. But today they sounded hollow, like an echo of something that was once true. "Well, I don't know what I'd do without you all either," I replied, trying to inject joy into my words. "I'll go to the bank now. I'll call you when it's done." "Perfect. Thanks, Mom. I love you." A kiss. "I love you too, son." A big kiss for the children. "Take care." Click. He hung up. He didn't even let me finish the sentence. "Take care" was left hanging in the kitchen air, alone and incomplete. I sighed with a sad smile. That's how life was now. Rushed conversations, blown kisses through a device, I love yous that sounded more like goodbye than promise. I was going to leave the cordless phone on its base, in the hallway sideboard, when a noise stopped me. It wasn't the static of a cut line. It was voice, Daniel's voice, but blurry, as if the phone was in a pocket or on a surface, picking up background sounds. Yes, that's it. She'll have it done in a while. It was him, talking to someone else. He must have put his mobile in his pocket without completely hanging up the landline. I was going to hang up myself, smiling at my son's oversight, so smart and so absent-minded sometimes, when his voice sounded again, clear and loaded with an annoyance that paralyzed me. God, how annoying she is. Always with the same routine. "Are you okay? Do you need more?" As if money grew on trees. A feminine laugh, sharp and complacent, responded. "Laura, my daughter-in-law. I already told you not to give her more delays. With your mother you have to be firm, Danny. Otherwise, she gets confident and thinks she can decide." My heart gave such a violent turn that I thought I was going to fall. I leaned against the wall, cold against my back. The sweat from my palms made the phone almost slip from my hands. I know, honey. I know, said Daniel with a whining tone, as if he were the victim. But if I don't give her I don't know what I'd do without you, Eurispiel. She gets silly. She bothers me with 1,000 stories. The dishwasher detergent promotion. Seriously, who does she think she is? The queen of the house? She's a… He paused briefly. I held my breath. The world had been reduced to that small earpiece glued to my ear, burning against my skin. The silence of my house was now oppressive, complicit in what was about to come. And it came. The word, clear, sharp, loaded with contempt that pierced my chest like an ice spear. Useless old woman. The air left my lungs in a dry, painful gasp. No, it couldn't be. He couldn't have said that. My Daniel, my boy, the same one I wore out my health working in that factory with double shifts so he could study. The same one I hugged when he had nightmares. The same one who told me you're the best mom in the world with bright eyes when he picked up his university degree. Useless old woman. The phrase echoed in my head, amplifying, deforming, embedding itself in every corner of my being. Laura's voice laughed again. Well, at least she's useful for that, for going to the bank. Take advantage now, while she can still be worth something, because with what the nursing home is going to cost us soon. Shut up, don't joke, said Daniel, but his voice sounded like laughter, not reproach, although sometimes, God, yes, she's a drag. Always with her manias, her old things, her house that smells like mothballs and soup. You try to talk to her about modern things, and she doesn't understand anything. It's like she lives on another planet. Well, yes, the planet of useless old people, Laura finished, with such casual cruelty that it bent me at the waist. A physical, real pain gripped my stomach. Well, anyway, said Daniel, with a tone of ending the conversation, I've done what you wanted. I gave her the speech, and she bit. Now she'll go running to the bank like a good little old lady. Shall we go get the kids? Yes, let's go. And tonight, to celebrate that the money is almost on its way, you're taking me to that new Italian place, okay? Whatever you say, beautiful. There was a noise of keys, the creak of a door opening, and then silence. Absolute silence, broken only by the buzz of the line and the furious beating of my own blood in my ears. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold tile floor of the entrance. The tears didn't come. Not yet. They were too big, too painful to find their way out. They remained trapped somewhere between my throat and my chest, forming a ball of ice and broken glass that prevented me from breathing. Useless old woman. Was that what I was? A nuisance? A means for a bank transfer? A cruel anecdote to share with his wife about the queen of the house and her mothball smell. I looked around. The house, my house, where I raised my son, where I buried my husband Manuel, 10 years ago, where every piece of furniture, every crack in the wall, every stain on the upholstery had a story that he had lived with me, the coffee table scratched with his crayons, the red wine stain on the sofa from when he declared himself to his first girlfriend and was so nervous he knocked over the glass, the bookshelf full of photos, Daniel at the beach, 3 years old, covered in sand, Daniel in his graduation suit, proud, Daniel with Laura on their wedding day, smiling at the camera, while I beside him cried with happiness, Daniel with his children, my beloved grandchildren, whom I barely saw because we're very busy, Mom, we'll stop by one day. All those framed smiles now looked at me not with love, but with mockery. They were proof of an entire life dedicated to building a house of cards that had just collapsed with a single phrase. How long was I there? On the floor? I don't know. Time lost all meaning. The sun coming through the hallway window kept changing angles, drawing long shadows that crawled across the floor like dark claws. Finally, the tears came. They weren't dramatic sobs. They were silent, relentless, hot. They rolled down my cheeks and fell onto my apron, soaking the worn fabric. I cried for my son. I cried for the boy I had lost. I cried for Manuel, who wasn't here to hug me and tell me everything would be okay. I cried for myself, for the naive, stupid woman who had believed that a mother's love was unbreakable and reciprocal. Useless old woman. The phrase was a poisoned echo in my mind. With each beat of my heart, it repeated, useless, useless, useless. And then, something broke inside me. It wasn't a sad break, it was something different. something more dangerous. A cold and silent crack through which slipped a determination I hadn't felt in years. I stopped crying. I dried my face with the back of my hand, with a brusqueness that surprised me. I got up from the floor. My joints creaked, protesting the cold and position, but I barely paid attention. I walked to the kitchen, slowly but firmly. I hung up the phone on its base. The final click sounded like the bolt of a door closing forever. I looked at my reflection in the black glass of the oven. An older woman, gray hair pulled back in a frayed bun, swollen and reddened eyes, skin furrowed by wrinkles that told 70 years of laughter, worries and tears. An old apron. Yes, maybe for them I was just a useless old woman. But not anymore. A strange glacial calm took hold of me. The pain hadn't gone away, but it had transformed. It was now an engine, a purpose, useful for something. I muttered to myself, and my voice sounded hoarse and strange in the kitchen silence. Okay, I'm going to show you what a useless old woman is good for. I didn't go to the bank. Instead, I went upstairs, each step a conscious effort, as if I were climbing to a scaffold or a new beginning. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to call him to yell. Those were the weapons of the emotional old woman, of the hurt mother. I was no longer that person. The one I was had died on the hallway floor, crushed by her own son's contempt. I entered my room. Our room, Manuel's and mine. It smelled of dust, memories, and the lavender I put in the drawers. I went straight to the closet, to the back, where I kept an old wooden box with mother-of-pearl inlays that had belonged to my mother. I took it out and put it on the bed, on the flowered comforter that Manuel loved so much. I opened it. Inside, the past rested in silence. Yellowed letters, black and white photos, my father's pocket watch, my first voter ID, and a small bundle of papers tied with a green ribbon. The house papers. I untied them with fingers that barely trembled. I had read them 1,000 times with Manuel, dreaming of paying off the mortgage, of leaving something to Daniel. We had worked like mules to get it. This house was our sweat, our sleepless nights, our love made brick and cement. And now it was a mothball smell, a reminder of old age, a procedure for the bank. I spread the deeds on the bed. There it was. My name, Elena Morales, widow of Garcia, sole and absolute owner. An idea began to form in my mind, clear and terrible. It wasn't an impulsive, vengeful plan. It was something deeper, more thoughtful. It was justice. A silent and devastating justice. Daniel wanted money. Laura wanted a new Italian restaurant. They dreamed of my nursing home. Fine. I went back down to the kitchen. I took the phone, but I didn't dial Daniel's number. I dialed another, one I hadn't dialed in years. The line rang twice before a female voice, professional and clear, answered. Law firm Fernandez and Associates. How may I help you? I took a deep breath. The ball of ice in my chest hardened. Good morning, I said, and my voice sounded surprisingly serene, firm. I would like to speak with Mrs. Marta Fernandez, please. Tell her it's Elena Garcia, Daniel's mother. While I waited for them to put the lawyer on, my gaze wandered around the kitchen. It fell on Daniel's photo, about 5 years old, sitting on my lap, laughing with his mouth full of ice cream. That laugh, so pure, so full of trust. Marta's voice, warm and familiar, cut through the line. Elena, my God, what a surprise. How are you? How's Daniel? A sad smile drew on my lips. Marta, I said, fixing my eyes on the photo of the boy he once was. I need you to help me with something. Something urgent. The conversation with Marta lasted almost an hour. I hung up with my mind buzzing, not with confusion, but with a terrifying clarity. She had tried to dissuade me at first. Alarmed. Elena, are you sure? Have you talked to him? This is drastic, but my determination, that new glacial force that had been born from the ashes of my heart, left no room for doubt. I told her just enough. What was necessary, that I had discovered his intentions weren't good, that I needed to protect my assets, my usefulness. I hung up and stood motionless in the kitchen, listening to the tick-tock of the wall clock that Manuel had hung 30 years ago. Each tick-tock was 1 second less of the life I had known, 1 second more toward the unknown. I knew Daniel would call, He was methodical. He had given an order and expected its fulfillment. He wasn't going to wait until tomorrow. And so it was. The phone rang barely half an hour later. The screen showed his name. Daniel Orsain Nalan, it said. The heart I had put years ago when I learned to program contacts now looked at me with sarcasm. I let it ring 4 times. I needed to compose myself. I needed to be the Elena of always, the one he expected. The useless old woman who ran to the phone when her son called. On the 5th ring, I picked up. "Son," I said, and managed to make my voice sound a little agitated, as if I had been busy. "Mom, did you go to the bank already?" There was no greeting, just the question. Urgent. "Oh, Daniel. I'm so sorry," I said, with the apologetic tone he expected. "It's just that I got a little dizzy, you know. That dizziness I sometimes get. I had to lie down for a while, but I'm going right now, sweetheart. Right now." I invented the excuse on the fly, adding the detail about the dizziness to give it verisimilitude. The dizziness existed, and I did sometimes get it. There was an uncomfortable silence on the other side. I could almost visualize his face, the furrowed brow, the look of annoyance exchanging with Laura's. "Mom, please," he said, containing his irritation. "I told you it was important. Can't you take an aspirin and go?" Yes, of course. Sorry, son. I don't want to cause you problems. It's just that with age." I left the sentence hanging, tempting him, giving him exactly what he wanted to hear, the excuse of the decrepit old woman. He sighed, long and suffering. "Well, okay, but please go now. Then call me to confirm." "Of course, my dear. Right now." I paused, playing my first card with a trembling hand. "Listen, Daniel. Are you okay? I thought I heard, I don't know, something strange in your voice before. Are you sure nothing's wrong?" The silence on the other side was absolute for a couple of seconds. I had caught him by surprise. Was he wondering how much I had heard? No, not at all. I'm perfect. Stressed with work, nothing more. Don't worry about me." "Well, if you say so," I said, innocently. "Well, I'm going to the bank." A kiss. A kiss. I hung up. This time, it was me. My hand didn't tremble now. I had crossed a threshold. The game had begun. I dressed carefully. I put on the blue dress that Manuel liked, the one he said made me look like a lady from another era. I pulled my hair back more carefully. I put on a little lipstick. I wasn't going to the bank. I was going somewhere else. I left the house. The street was full of normal Tuesday morning life. Neighbors going shopping, children playing, the hum of cars, a world that kept turning, completely ignorant of the earthquake that had just shaken mine. I walked 2 blocks to the small real estate agency in the neighborhood. Real Estate La Esperanza, an ironic name considering my mission. A young woman with glasses and a wide smile attended to me. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" I took a deep breath. "Good morning. I would like to put my house up for sale. Immediately." The young woman, who introduced herself as Claudia, blinked, surprised. "Ah, well, good. Do you have documentation? Have you thought about a price?" "I have all the documentation," I said, taking out the photocopies I had made after hanging up with Marta. "And as for the price, I want it to be quick. Put it for 20% less than market value, but with one condition." Claudia nodded, taking notes on her computer. "Tell me." "The sale must be discreet. No flashy ads, no putting a big sign on the facade, and the offer must be presented and accepted within a maximum of 2 weeks. If there's no buyer in that time, I withdraw the property." It was madness. Such a low price would fly in the current market, but I needed it to be quick. I needed it to be irrevocable before Daniel could smell anything wrong. Claudia looked at me with curiosity, but didn't ask questions. In her eyes I saw the story she was inventing. An old woman who needs money for a nursing home or for a sick relative, the typical sad story. She nodded. "Agreed, Mrs. Garcia. I understand. With that price, I assure you that in 2 weeks or less, you have a buyer." I signed the papers she put in front of me. My signature, naturally shaky, was firm and decided today. Each stroke was a nail in the coffin of the life I had known. Leaving the real estate office, the sun hit my face. I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt peace. An empty and terrible peace. Like the calm that follows a nuclear explosion, everything was destroyed. Nothing remained. And in that nothingness, there was a terrifying freedom. The rest of the day was a tense wait. I pretended normalcy. I went shopping. I prepared lunch for one. As always, I cleaned the house, mopping every centimeter of floor, as if trying to erase the traces of my own footsteps, of my own existence in that place. The phone rang again in the afternoon. It was Daniel. "Mom, what about the bank?" His tone was drier. The mask of patience was cracking. "Oh, son. I'm sorry," I said, with my best voice of a troubled old woman. There was a tremendous line. People for everything. And you know, with my legs, I can't stand that long. I went, but seeing the line, I decided to come back and go tomorrow first thing, when they open. I'll go with a folding chair, you know, like Mrs. Carmen does. I invented the excuse on the spot, adding the detail about the folding chair to give it verisimilitude. Mrs. Carmen existed, and she did indeed take a chair to the bank. Daniel let out a grunt of frustration. "Mom, this is incredible. Couldn't you have waited? I told you it was important." "I know, sweetheart. I know, and I feel terrible. But tomorrow without fail, I promise. Okay? First thing." I used the pleading tone he liked so much, the one that reinforced his role as the patient son who had to deal with a difficult mother. "Well, okay," he yielded, although you could tell he was boiling inside. "Tomorrow without fail. Call me as soon as you come out." "Of course, my dear. And the children? How are they doing at school?" "Fine, fine," he said, evasively. "Well, I have to hang up. I have a conference call. Of course I won't keep you. Take care. I love you." "Me too." A kiss. Click. He hung up first again. He didn't even pretend to listen to my goodbyes anymore. The night was long and sleepless. I lay in the bed I had shared with Manuel, and looked at the ceiling. Shadows danced, forming figures that resembled my fears and my determination. Was I doing the right thing? Was it the madness of a senile old woman? Or was it the most lucid action of my life? "Useless old woman," the echo returned, but this time it didn't hurt me. It focused me. The next day at 9:05 in the morning, the phone rang. It was Claudia, from the real estate agency. "Mrs. Garcia, good morning. Do you remember the 2-week condition?" My heart skipped a beat. "Yes." "Well, you have an offer. Firm. At the price you asked. A young couple looking in the neighborhood. They want to see the house this afternoon, if possible, and if it convinces them, they'll sign tomorrow." The world stopped. I had done it. In less than 24 hours, I had found a buyer for my entire life. "This afternoon," I repeated, trying not to let my voice betray the vertigo I felt. "Yes, yes, they can come. At 5. "Perfect. They'll come then." "Are you sure, Mrs. Garcia?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said, and it was the truth. I hung up. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the prey to arrive. And then, the phone rang again. It was Daniel. Just in time. "Mom, are you at the bank?" His voice sounded tense, expectant. "No, sweetheart. Not yet," I said, sweetly. "The real estate agency just called." Absolute silence. So deep I thought the line had been cut. "The real estate agency?" he asked finally, with genuine confusion. "Yes, son, you know, the one on the corner. La Esperanza. What a nice name, isn't it?" I let my voice sound distracted, as if it wasn't important. "They want to come see the house this afternoon. A young couple. They seem very nice." "See the house?" Daniel's voice was now a thread of voice loaded with incredulity and something that seemed fear. "Mom? What are you saying? Why are they going to see the house?" "Well, to buy it, right?" I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I put it up for sale. Yesterday, I told them it was urgent. And look, in one day I already have a buyer. What speed, right? The world today goes." "That you put it up for sale?" The scream was so thunderous that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was a scream of panic, of absolute terror. The scream of someone whose world suddenly crumbles. Yes, I said, with a calm that contrasted brutally with his hysteria. I thought you were right. Me? Me about what? He screamed, breathless. You could hear him hyperventilating. Well? I said, lowering my voice to almost a whisper, loaded with glacial intention, that I'm a useless old woman. And this house is too big for a useless old woman. I smell like mothballs and soup, Daniel, and I live on another planet. So, I've decided to come to yours. I found a beautiful nursing home, very close to your house, so I'll be closer to you and the children. I'll be able to see them more often, like you wanted. The silence on the other side of the phone was so dense I could hear the beating of my own heart, strong and steady, like a drum marking the beginning of a war. It was no longer the weak and sorrowful heart of the useless old woman. It was that of a general who had just deployed her first and most devastating weapon. A nursing home. Daniel's voice was barely a thread of air, broken, unrecognizable. Mom, are you okay? Did you fall? Did you hit your head? I could visualize him. Pale, with his free hand perhaps gripping the edge of a desk, knuckles white. Laura beside him, eyes wide, trying to decipher what the conversation was about. On the contrary, son, I've never thought more clearly, I said, with a softness I knew would drive him crazy. You were absolutely right. I'm a burden to you. I worry you. I give you work. I repeat myself. I insist with the dishwasher detergent. This house is a burden for you, a reminder that you have an old and decrepit mother, so I've decided to simplify things. I sell the house, with the money, I pay for a good nursing home, one of those with a garden and activities, and what's left? Well, that's what children are for, right? To inherit. Although maybe there won't be much left after paying for the nursing home. They're so expensive. Each word was a needle, deliberate, precise. I was returning his own poison, wrapped in the gift paper of condescension and the logic he employed so much. Mom, stop. Stop now. His voice trembled, but now with a hint of authority, trying to regain control. It was the tone he used with his children when they misbehaved. You don't know what you're saying. You're confused. You're not going to sell this house. It's your house, Dad's house. Precisely because of that, I replied, without getting upset. Your father and I wore ourselves out for it. I don't want it to end up being a nuisance for our son. He would understand me. He always said Daniel's well-being comes first. This isn't my well-being. He exploded, and the scream was so shrill it made the neighbor's cat, dozing on my windowsill, bolt away. This is madness. I need that money. I need it. There it was. The mask had fallen completely. The urgency wasn't for my well-being or for a vague investment. It was for his need, clear, tangible, selfish. The money? I said, feigning absolute confusion. But son, I was going to give you the money for the transfer today. Isn't that what you wanted? Or did you need more, for the new Italian restaurant? The silence that followed was terrifying. It was the silence of someone who realizes they've walked on a mine and already heard the click. I didn't just know about the transfer. I knew about the restaurant. I knew everything. What are you saying? He murmured. His voice was now cautious, full of a new and deeper fear. Nothing, sweetheart. I sang sweetly. Just that I'm an old woman who sometimes hears things. Things I shouldn't, like about useless old woman. And about the nursing home that was going to cost you. And about the planet of old people. Things like that. I let the words float on the line. I could hear his breathing, labored, panting, as if he had just run a marathon. Mom. The words sounded like a whimper. An animal sound of panic. Mom, listen. It wasn't serious. It was a bad day. Laura and we were stressed, arguing. We didn't mean it. Ah, I said, with a coldness that surprised even me. How curious. It sounded very serious, very convincing. I swear we didn't, he pleaded. The authority had evaporated, replaced by servile terror. It was a mistake. Stupidity. Please, Mom, don't sell the house. Don't do that. Where are you going to go? You need us. That's exactly why, Daniel. Because I need you. I don't want to be a burden. You're young. You have your lives. I'm just a hindrance, a useless old woman, a reminder of another time. Better to clean house. Right? Like you say, be firm. Stop! Stop now! He screamed. I heard a noise of keys on the other side, a car engine starting suddenly. Don't do anything. Don't move a finger. I'm coming over right now. Wait for me to get there. But, son, you have work? The conference? I said, with sarcasm, driving the knife a little deeper. Fuck the conference, he roared, and then he hung up. I slowly placed the phone on the base. My hands were cold but steady. The silence of the house was absolute, expectant. The air smelled of dust and morning coffee, but also of something new, electric tension, the calm before the storm. I had achieved the impossible. I had made my successful son, always so busy, so important, drop everything and come running. Not out of love, not out of concern, out of panic, out of greed, out of fear of losing the loot he had always taken for granted. I walked to the living room and sat in Manuel's armchair, the one facing the front door. It was a worn throne, with arms shiny from use. From here he had read the newspaper, watched TV, watched Daniel play on the floor. Now I sat here not to remember, but to confront. Time slowed down. Every second was a beat of the old pendulum clock that was the heart of the house. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I prepared the scene. I put 2 cups of coffee on the side table, one for me, another for him. Not because I intended to offer it to him, but because it was a domestic, normal detail that would contrast brutally with the conversation that was going to take place. The contrast between the warmth of routine and the coldness of reality. I caressed my apron. I adjusted my bun. I took a deep breath. And then, I heard it. The roar of an engine beyond normal for our quiet neighborhood. A black BMW, expensive, angry, screeched to a halt in front of the house, with a screech of tires that made several neighbors peek their heads out the windows. The car door opened violently. And there he was. My son, Daniel. But it wasn't the neat and self-assured Daniel I knew. This one had disheveled hair, his tie undone and askew, his face haggard, pale, with bloodshot eyes and an expression of pure terror and contained fury. He wore an expensive suit that now looked like a wrinkled and borrowed garment. He looked toward the house with fierce intensity, as if he could knock down the door with his gaze. He climbed the 2 porch steps in one jump and didn't ring. He pounded on the door with his knuckles, with violence that made the frame shake. Bang, bang. Each blow was a lash in the morning silence. I got up leisurely. I walked to the door with deliberate slowness, calculated to increase his anxiety on the other side. Bang, bang, bang. Mum, open up! I opened the door. And there he was, framed in the doorway, panting, his chest rising and falling agitatedly. He smelled of cold sweat and fear. His eyes, the same green eyes he inherited from his father, looked at me with a desperation I hadn't seen since he was a child and had gotten lost in the market. Daniel, I said, with perfectly performed innocence. My God, son, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. He looked at me, and for a second, he didn't see the submissive old woman eager to please. He saw something else, something that disconcerted him, a coldness in my eyes, an erect posture that wasn't usual. The glacial calm emanating from me was more terrifying than any scream. He pushed the door, passed by me without even brushing against me, and entered the hallway. His gaze scanned the room as if looking for evidence of my madness, packed boxes for sale signs. Where are they? He asked, breathless. Who? The real estate people. The buyers. Oh no, sweetheart. They're coming this afternoon at 5, like I told you. He turned toward me, and for the first time, he really looked at me. He looked me up and down, my blue dress, my impeccable bun, my insulting tranquility. His confusion was palpable. Are you drunk? He asked, with a hint of hope in his voice, as if he would prefer 1,000 times that it was alcohol and not lucidity behind my actions. No, Daniel. I'm completely sober. I took a step toward the living room. Do you want coffee? I just made it. He followed me like an enraged bull that had been pricked with a banderilla. I don't want coffee, he said, biting each word. I want you to explain what the hell you're doing. What's all this story about selling the house? About the nursing home? About what you heard? I sat back down in Manuel's armchair. I took my cup of coffee. I took a slow sip. Silence was my weapon now. I let him burn, standing in the middle of the room, under the weight of his own anxiety. Sit down, Daniel, I said, pointing to the sofa in front of me. I'm not going to sit down, he snapped, crossing his arms, but his pose as a grown man looked fragile, brittle. It was a child having a tantrum. As you wish. I took another sip of coffee. I've decided to sell the house. It's a thoughtful decision. It will free me from worries, and you too. It doesn't free me from anything, he screamed, losing the last vestiges of control. It ruins me, don't you understand? I need that money. What for, Daniel? I asked, placing the cup on the saucer with a soft clink. I raised my gaze and faced him. What do you need the money for with such urgency? He froze. The direct question, asked with that calm, caught him off guard. He opened his mouth and closed it. He swallowed. His eyes escaped from mine, looking toward his wedding photo, toward the carpet, anywhere but my face. It's for an investment. A business opportunity. Very good. I couldn't let it slip away. The lie sounded weak, grating, even to his own ears. Ah. An investment, I repeated, as if considering his words, and Laura agrees, because from what I heard, she wanted an Italian restaurant, to celebrate that the money is almost on its way. Those were her words, weren't they? The color drained completely from his face. He staggered slightly and finally let himself fall onto the sofa, as if his legs had failed him. He looked at me with an expression of absolute horror, of incredulity. The child he had been peeked behind the man's eyes, scared and cornered. You heard everything, he whispered. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, a sentence. Everything, I confirmed, softly. From the yes, that's it, to the useless old woman and the planet that Laura and I inhabit. It was very educational. It opened my eyes. Mom? He tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come out. He put a hand to his forehead, sweaty. It was a mistake. A moment of stupidity. I swear I didn't mean it. Which part? I asked, leaning slightly forward. My voice was low, but cut like glass. The part about the useless old woman, or the part about the nursing home that was going to cost you, or the part where you mocked my supermarket promotions and the mothball smell of my house. Which part didn't you mean, Daniel? Each question was a lash. He hunched his shoulders, as if trying to make himself small. He couldn't hold my gaze. None of it. I mean, God, Mom, I'm sorry. Tears appeared in his eyes. They were tears of rage, of frustration, of fear, not of repentance. I knew it. A mother knows the difference. Forgive me, please. It was horrible. I'm an idiot. A bad son. He covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. The scene was dramatic, designed to soften me, to appeal to the mother who had always forgiven everything, who had wiped the slate clean with a simple "I'm sorry." For years it had worked. Not today. I observed his performance in silence. I waited for the sobbing to subside. The pendulum clock kept marking time. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Do you know what hurt me the most, Daniel? I said, when his sobs became irregular breathing. He lowered his hands. His face was red, marked by tears. He looked at me, hopeful. He thought he had managed to move me, that the classic "sorry, Mom" had taken effect. What? He asked, with a child's voice. It wasn't the insult, I said, and my voice sounded strangely serene, even to me. We all say things we don't mean in a moment of anger. Although that one hurt. A lot. I took a deep breath containing the wave of pain that still wanted to emerge. What hurt me the most, I continued, was the complicity. The way you laughed with Laura. The way you let her laugh at me. The way you turned your mother, the woman who gave you life, who fed you, who comforted you, into the private joke of your marriage. That's not a mistake, Daniel. That's character. That's who you are now. He opened his mouth to protest, but nothing came out. My words had reached a place where his false tears couldn't touch. And then, I added, there's the little detail of the scam. The word fell into the room like a bomb. Scam, he stammered, paling again. What scam? Well, let's say it clearly, Daniel, I said, leaning back in the armchair. You didn't want that money for an investment. You wanted it for yourself, for Laura, for a whim. And you asked me for it urgently, knowing I would give it to you, knowing I trust you, knowing that my only purpose in life is not to disappoint you. You used my love for you as currency. That for me is an emotional scam. It's the lowest thing you could do. He jumped to his feet, fury returning to his eyes, replacing the false penitence, and selling the house behind my back isn't a scam. Hiding from me that you have a buyer, playing this theater of the nursing home with me. Finally, the mask had fallen completely. Now there was the core of his anger. The money, always the money. It's not a scam, Daniel, I said, with infinite patience. It's my house, in my name. I can sell it if I want. And as for the theater, I was just following your script, the one about the useless old woman who is a nuisance. I've decided to stop being a nuisance to you, forever. The last word resonated in the room, forever. He caught it. His gaze became wild, desperate. Don't do it, he pleaded, and this time the desperation sounded real. Mom, please. I'm sorry. I swear. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll come see you more. I'll bring the kids every weekend. I'll change. You'll see. I shook my head slowly. No, Daniel, you're not going to change, and I don't have time to wait for you to do it. The sale is tomorrow. Tomorrow. The scream was heartbreaking. You can't. I can, and I'm going to do it, I said with final firmness. The papers are ready, the real estate agency has them. The buyer signs tomorrow at noon. He stood staring at me, and in his eyes I saw all emotions pass: incredulity, rage, fear, negotiation, and finally a somber and furious acceptance. He had lost. His useless old mother had beaten him. And what are you going to do? He asked, with a hoarse voice, loaded with venom. Go to your nursing home? Die alone among strangers? Is that what you want? No, I said, and for the first time, a sad and genuine smile drew on my lips. That was what you wanted for me. What I want is different. He remained silent, waiting, breathing, with difficulty. The buyer, I explained, is a young couple. He's a carpenter. She's a teacher. They have a baby. They came to see the house yesterday afternoon, while you were in your important conference. They loved it. They loved the garden for the child. They loved the big kitchen. They loved the history this house has. I paused, letting my words sink in. And when I told them why I was selling it so quickly and so cheap, I continued, seeing how his eyes widened. I told them the truth. I told them I had a son who thought I was a useless old woman and that I needed to free him from his burden. You told them? He murmured, horrified. Shame, finally, appeared on his face. Yes. And you know what they told me? My voice broke slightly, not from sadness, but from a different emotion. The woman, her name was Sonia, started crying. She hugged me. She told me, "Ma'am, you're not a burden, you're a treasure." Her husband, Javier, told me his mother had passed away and he would give anything to have her back. The tears I hadn't shed before appeared now, but they weren't from pain. They were from a bitter, terrible vindication. They made me an offer on the spot, I said, wiping a tear with my finger, and they made me another offer too. They said they had no family in the city, that if I wanted, I could stay in the attic, converted into an apartment. I could be the grandmother of their child, take care of him sometimes, tell him stories, smell like mothballs and soup as much as I wanted, be useful, really. Daniel was speechless, absolutely speechless. His perfect plan, his future with the money from the sale, his liberation from the useless old woman, had turned against him in the cruelest and most poetic way possible. I wasn't going to a nursing home. I would stay in my house, but with a new family, a family that did want a grandmother. So, I concluded, with a sigh that released 70 years of weight, tomorrow I sign the sale, and in the evening probably, I'll help give little Pablo dinner. That's going to be my new purpose. The revelation was the coup de grace. Daniel stepped back, as if he had been punched in the chest. His breathing was a broken whistle. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred, incredulity, and pain so deep that for a second it shook me. You're stealing from me," he managed to say, with his voice broken by emotion. "You're stealing my inheritance, my house." "No," I said, with the last drop of energy I had left. "I'm freeing you, Daniel. Like you wanted. You won't have to pretend you care about me anymore. You won't have to put up with your useless old mother anymore." He turned around and walked toward the door. His back, always so straight, was now hunched, defeated. He opened the door and stopped at the threshold. The morning sun illuminated him from behind, creating a dark and broken silhouette. He turned one last time. His eyes, which once looked at me with adoration, now only contained ice. "I hope Dad could see you," he spat with contempt that surpassed even that of the phone call. "He would die of shame." And then he left, slamming the door with such force that it resonated throughout the house, making the photos on the walls tremble, the cups in the kitchen, and what little remained of my broken heart. I was left alone in the silence, with the echo of his poisoned words floating in the air. He would die of shame. I collapsed in the armchair, my strength suddenly abandoning me. The courage, the determination, the glacial fury evaporated, leaving only a tremendous emptiness and a sharp stabbing pain. And then, I broke down crying. I cried like I hadn't since I buried Manuel. I cried for the son I had lost. I cried for the woman I had had to become to survive. I cried for the cruelty of his last words. Was he right? Would Manuel be ashamed of me? Had I gone too far? The sound of the phone made me jump. It was the real estate agency, Claudia, with her cheerful voice. "Mrs. Garcia, just to confirm tomorrow's appointment at 12 to sign. Everything is ready. Are you sure you're okay?" I contemplated Manuel's photo on the side table, smiling, always smiling. He always said, "Elena, you're stronger than you think." I took a breath. "Yes, Claudia," I said, wiping the tears with the back of my hand. My voice sounded hoarse but clear. "Everything is perfect. I'll be there." I hung up. I looked around the house that would no longer be mine, but where, ironically, for the first time in years I could feel at home with strangers who had offered me what my own blood had denied me. A place. And I knew, with a certainty that pierced my soul, that the war was over, and that, in the silence left by the battle, only remained the pain of a solitary victory and the ghost of a son whom finally I had had to let go. The door slam resonated in every bone of my body, a metallic and final echo that sealed 10 years of loneliness and 35 of motherhood in a single instant. The tears that had sprouted, hot and salty, dried suddenly on my cheeks, leaving a salty tightness that was the only reminder that I was still alive. "I hope Dad could see you. He would die of shame." His words didn't float in the air. They had embedded themselves in the walls, in the furniture, in my skin like a slow-acting poison. I got up from Manuel's armchair. My knees creaked in protest, but they held me. I was no longer the woman who collapsed. Now I was the one who stood up, even if it was on ruins. I walked to Manuel's photograph on the side table, his smile eternally confident, his calm gaze. I ran my fingers over the silver frame, already tarnished. "Shame, Manuel," I murmured, and my voice sounded hoarse in the silence. "Shame that I finally defended myself, or shame of the man your son has become?" I got no answer, of course, only the constant tick-tock of the clock, marking the time I had left in this house. But deep in my soul, in that place where I kept the deepest certainties, I knew that Manuel wouldn't be ashamed. He would be devastated, yes, but not because of me, because of Daniel, because of the path he had taken. Manuel always said, "A man's character isn't judged by how he treats the powerful, but by how he treats those who can't return the favor." And Daniel had failed that test in the cruelest way. The peace I had felt before, the glacial determination returned, but it was no longer cold. It was serene. It was the calm that follows the storm, when the landscape is devastated but the air is clean. I went upstairs, not with the heaviness of before, but with renewed purpose. I wasn't going to pack my life for a nursing home. I was going to prepare a room for a grandmother, Pablo's grandmother. I entered the attic. It had always been a storage room, a place to keep the ghosts of past Christmases, Daniel's crib, Manuel's clothes I hadn't dared to donate, dust and nostalgia. Now, with the light coming through the skylight, I saw the potential. It was spacious, with exposed wooden beams that gave it a cozy air. From the window you could see the garden, the cherry tree we planted when Daniel was born, now in bloom. "Here," I said aloud. "I'll put my rocking chair here, and a lamp for reading, and Daniel's crib for when Pablo needs to nap." The idea gave me a pang of pain, but also hope, a hope that didn't depend on blood, but on choice, on kindness. I went down to the kitchen and made tea. My hands no longer trembled. While the water boiled, the phone rang again. This time it wasn't a fright, it was a bell toll. It was Marta, the lawyer. "Elena, I just hung up with the notary. Everything is ready for tomorrow at 12. The buyers, Sonia and Javier, have already signed the preliminary documentation on their part. Only your signature is missing." "Perfect, Marta. I'll be there." "Elena," her voice hesitated. "Are you sure? Daniel has tried to call me. He's beside himself. He says he's going to challenge the sale. That you're incapable. That I'm a senile old woman." I finished for her, with a hint of bitterness. "I know, but the medical reports you had me get last week for the will prove otherwise, don't they?" "Yes," she admitted. "You're as sharp as a tack, but a legal battle with your own son. Elena, it will be ugly, very ugly." "Let it be," I said with a firmness that surprised me. "I'm not afraid anymore, Marta. I have nothing left to lose that I haven't already lost." There was silence on the other side. "All right," she said finally, with new respect in her voice. "Tomorrow at 12 I'll take care of everything." I hung up and served myself tea. The afternoon passed in strange calm. I walked through the house, not to say goodbye, but to welcome the new memories that would be created. In the garden I imagined Pablo running around. In the kitchen, Sonia and me, preparing dinner together. In the living room, Javier fixing a shelf. The house would no longer be a mausoleum, but a home again. And I, the old woman who smelled like mothballs, would be part of it. At dusk, the doorbell rang. It wasn't Daniel's violent pounding. It was a soft, almost timid ring. My heart raced. Was it him? Was he coming back to really apologize? To kneel and beg? Part of me, the wounded mother, clung to that last and fragile thread of hope. I went to the door and opened it. It wasn't Daniel. It was Laura. My daughter-in-law was there, standing on the porch, under the dim light of dusk. She wasn't wearing her usual executive suit. She wore jeans and a sweatshirt, and her face was devoid of makeup. Her eyes were swollen and reddened. She looked human, fragile, something I had never seen in her. "Elena," she said, and her voice was a thread of voice. "May I come in?" For an instant, I wanted to say no. I wanted to slam the door in her face. She was the other half of the cruelty, the complacent laugh on the other side of the phone. But I nodded slowly and stepped aside to let her in. She closed the door and stood in the hallway, hugging herself as if she were cold. "Daniel isn't well," she began, without looking me in the eyes. "He came back like an animal. He broke a lamp. He screamed terrible things. About you. About me." I just observed her. I said nothing. She swallowed. "I asked him what had happened. What he had said to you to make you do that. And at first, he didn't want to tell me. Then, he spilled everything about the sale, about the nursing home, about staying here." Finally, she raised her gaze. Her eyes, normally so cold and calculating, were full of tears. "And then, he told me why. He told me what you heard." A tear slid down her cheek, and I knew it was true, because I recognized it. I recognized my words, my laugh. The silence stretched, only the tick-tock of the clock marking the rhythm of her confession. "I've always pushed him, Elena," she whispered, with a broken voice. "Always. To be more ambitious, to want more, to see things as transactions. He wasn't like that. Not completely." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "But I was, and I contaminated him. I convinced him that asking you for that money was logical, that you were a burden, that the nursing home was the solution. I said useless old woman first. He just followed me." She was admitting it. She wasn't putting all the blame on Daniel. She was taking her part, It was the last thing I expected. And why are you telling me this now, Laura? I asked, with a voice softer than I thought myself capable of. So I'll withdraw the sale? So I'll forgive your husband? No, she exclaimed, with sudden fervor. No, the sale must go ahead. She took a deep breath. I came to ask your forgiveness, to tell you that you're right, about everything. Daniel and I, we were wrong, horribly wrong. And we don't deserve your house, or your money, or you. The tears ran freely down her face now. They weren't dramatic, they were real. I told Daniel he has to face what he's done, that he can't blame you, that what happened today is our fault. Only ours. I leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. This wasn't the Laura I knew. This wasn't the calculating and cold daughter-in-law. This was a scared, repentant woman who saw the house of cards of her life crumbling and recognized that she had blown to bring it down. And him? I asked. Does he understand? She shook her head, sadly. No, not right now. He's blinded by rage, by the feeling of betrayal. But I do. And I needed you to know. And I needed to tell you that I'm sorry, really, with all my soul, for the pain we've caused you. I looked at this young woman, destroyed in front of me, and I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel vindication. I felt pity, and a glimpse of something that could be, with time, a very, very weak bridge. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Laura, I said. It doesn't turn on with an "I'm sorry." It's built with actions, with time. I know, she whispered. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just hope that you know my repentance is real, and that I wish I could turn back time. I nodded slowly. There was nothing more to say. I'm going to leave, she murmured, heading to the door. Daniel doesn't know I came. She stopped with her hand on the doorknob. Elena, take care of yourself, and good luck with the new family. They deserve this house, and you deserve peace. And then she left, closing the door softly behind her, leaving me more confused and shaken than after Daniel's explosion. The night fell completely. I went to bed but didn't sleep. I turned over Laura's words, her genuine expression of pain, her admission of guilt. Was it possible? Could there be a crack of light in so much darkness? Or was it another manipulation, more subtle and therefore more dangerous? The morning arrived, clear and cold. I dressed in the same blue dress. I pulled my hair back. I put on the pearl earrings that Manuel gave me on our 25th anniversary. Today wasn't a day to hide. It was a day to reaffirm oneself. At 11:30, a taxi took me to the notary's office. Marta was waiting for me at the entrance, impeccable in her suit. Everything okay? She asked, scrutinizing me. Everything in its place, I replied. Inside, in a room with noble wood furniture that smelled of old paper and seriousness, were Sonia and Javier. He, tall and robust, with the calloused hands of someone who works with wood. She, small, with a nervous smile and kind eyes that sought me as soon as I entered. Mrs. Elena, said Sonia, approaching. Good morning. Good morning, sweetheart, I replied, and squeezed the hand she extended to me. The notary, an elderly man with neat manners, had us sit down and began reading the documents aloud. The legal language was cold and distant, speaking of properties, charges, prices, impositions, but above those words floated the human reality, warm and tremendous. I was giving them my past in exchange for a future. Are you sure? Asked the notary, following protocol. Do you sign this sale of your own free will? Yes, we said in unison, Sonia and Javier with conviction, me with deep peace. I signed. My name, Elena Morales, widow of Garcia, flowed from the pen with irrevocable firmness. Each letter was a step forward. When we finished, Sonia turned to me, with bright eyes. And the other thing, Mrs. Elena? The room, is our offer still standing? Marta had explained everything to them, of course. My situation. My decision. Their offer. It's still standing, I said, and a genuine smile, the first in a long time, lit up my face. If you still want an old woman as a tenant. Javier laughed, a warm laugh that filled the room. We don't want a tenant, we want a grandmother, he said, and his simplicity, his honesty reached my soul. We left the notary's office. The midday sun was bright. Marta said goodbye with an eloquent handshake. I stayed on the sidewalk with Sonia and Javier. When Sonia began, "I need a couple of days," I said, "to sort out some things. Monday? Perfect." Javier nodded. "Monday will come to help you with whatever you need, and for dinner, Sonia makes an incredible lasagna." I nodded, excited. They left hand in hand, walking toward their old and practical car, a bubble of ordinary happiness that I was going to have the privilege of touching. I stood alone on the sidewalk, breathing the city air that was already, somehow, a little more mine. The weight of the house, the mortgage, the expectation had vanished. I felt light. I returned home by taxi. Getting out of the car, I saw a figure sitting on my porch steps, hunched over, head in hands. It was Daniel. My heart constricted. More drama? More screaming? More accusations? I walked slowly toward him. Hearing my footsteps, he raised his head. His appearance was devastating. He looked like he hadn't slept. He had a 2-day beard, wrinkled shirt, sunken and red eyes. But there was no rage in them. Only absolute desolation, an emptiness that was frightening. "Mom," he said, and his voice was rough, broken. "Daniel," I replied, keeping my distance. "Laura told me she came," he whispered. "She told me what she said to you." I remained still, waiting. "I didn't come to ask you for anything," he said, looking at his hands. "I came to tell you that you're right about everything." He raised his gaze to me, and for the first time in years I saw my son. Not the executive, not the angry man. I saw the scared child who had gotten lost. "I'm a bad son. I've been cruel, selfish, blind. I've hurt you, terrible hurt." Tears filled his eyes, but this time they weren't from rage. They were from pure and devastating pain. "Yesterday, when I told you about Dad," he swallowed, struggling with the words. "It was the lowest thing I've done in my life. And I'm sorry, with all my being." He fell silent, fighting to contain his tears. The silence between us was dense, charged with everything unsaid for years. "I signed the sale, Daniel," I said softly. "This morning, there's no going back." He nodded with his head down. "I know, and it's okay. It's the right thing." He paused. "Laura was right. We don't deserve anything." He got up from the step. He seemed smaller, younger, vulnerable. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Mom. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that I know the monster I've become." I looked at my son, destroyed in front of me, recognizing his own rottenness, and the last remnant of ice I kept around my heart broke. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was compassion. It was the recognition that somewhere under layers of ambition and greed was still the child I had nursed. "Change, Daniel," I said, and my voice sounded tired but clear, "isn't demonstrated with words. It's demonstrated with a life." He nodded, several times, as if he were burning the phrase into himself. "I know," he whispered. "I'm going to try. Even if it's from afar." He paused. May I know about you? Even if it's through Marta, to know you're okay." I considered his question. It wasn't a request for reconciliation. It was a request for minimal connection. A thread. "Yes," I said finally. "You may know." A solitary tear escaped from his eye and rolled down his unshaven cheek. "Thank you," he murmured. That's more than I deserve." He turned around and began walking toward his car, with slumped shoulders, a figure of absolute defeat. "Daniel," I called. He stopped and turned. "The children," I said, and my voice broke a little. "Don't keep them away from me because of our pride. They're not to blame." He closed his eyes, as if the words physically hurt him. "No," he whispered. "I won't. I promise." And then he left. Not with a slam, but in silence, absorbing the weight of his actions. I stood on the porch of the house that was no longer mine, but that would soon be my home again. The sun warmed my face. Inside me there was no joy, no triumph. There was a deep, painful, serene peace. Like the earth after a fire, black and devastated, but ready for something new to grow. I had tied up all the loose ends. The house had a new owner. A good one. My son knew the truth about me and about himself, and the burden of changing was now his. I had a place to go, a family that wanted me not out of obligation, but by choice. I entered the house. The silence was no longer oppressive, it was expectant. I walked to the phone and picked up the receiver. I dialed the real estate agency's number. Claudia. It's Elena Garcia. Could you give me Sonia's number? Yes, it's just that. I wanted to ask her if Pablo likes ginger cookies. I usually make them quite well. And as I hung up, with the promise of a new recipe and a new life ahead, I knew that the old Elena, the one who lived for others, the one who apologized for existing, had died on the hallway floor. And the one who got up, the one who had stood up for herself, the one who had chosen her own happiness, could finally breathe.